After lifting the title with Rangers in Scotland, there's talk inevitably about Steven Gerrard potentially becoming manager at Liverpool. So today, I'm going to look at how the former Reds midfielder would do in the top job, what transfers he would make, and whether or not now is the right time to go. So we know all about Gerrard's playing days on the field, but since retiring, how has he taken to coaching off of the field? Well, actually, like a duck to water, pretty comfortably. In his first managerial role, Gerrard has taken Rangers to the Scottish Premier League title, and in doing so, ended Celtic's complete and utter domination of the league. They could have won 10 in a row, but Rangers stopped that. In fact, on the face of it, you could probably say that it was rather inevitable. I mean, either one of those two are going to win the title. In fact, the last time one of them didn't win the title was all the way back in 1985 when a Alex Ferguson-led Aberdeen took home the championship. But of course, when you look at the fact in the last decade that Rangers have suffered financial difficulties, dropped down to the third division of Scottish football, worked their way back up and now have won the title, it's pretty impressive for the club as a whole. As for Gerrard's impact, well, he's turned them into an exciting and attacking yet defensively sound, very hard to beat team. In fact, upon winning the title in the 32nd game of the season, they were unbeaten. And on top of this, they conceded just 9 goals and almost scored 10 times more. It was, in all honesty, the perfect season. As for Gerrard's specific impact, he's turned the Rangers side into an exciting, attacking but defensively solid, brilliantly tough team to beat. In fact, when his men lifted the Scottish title, it was in the 32nd game week of the season. 32 games, unbeaten, conceding 9 goals and scoring almost 10 times as many as that. It's absolutely ridiculous. On top of this, I mean, despite the fact that they do have a rather big budget compared to the rest of Scottish football, they haven't got anywhere near the budget that Celtic have. So to do this and basically have to look for a fair few deals here and there makes it all the more impressive. As for those signings, and there have been quite a few of them, specifically the acquisitions of Kemar Roofe and Ryan Kent at Ibrox have been absolute masterstrokes, with Gerrard's tactical smarts and man management having also aided the notable improvements of Glenn Kamara, Connor Goldson and James Tavernier as well. He's the right back who now bizarrely has the goal scoring record of a top striker. This of course will be something to excite Liverpool fans. I mean, look at the way Jurgen Klopp did it. Took some pretty good signings, put his own stamp on them and then made them into world-class players. Obviously they cost a little bit more than the players that Rangers did, but given the circumstances, the likes of Salah, Mane and Andrew Robertson, for example, were all signed for pretty decent fees for what they now have become. Of course, Gerrard's success in transfers and Klopp's lack of covering after so many injuries this season just goes to show that a little bit of board backing in the transfer market can go a long way. Tactically at Rangers though, Gerrard's had almost the balls but also the opportunities to tweak his 4-3-3 formation to try and bring out the best of his Rangers squad. There's been tests like injuries to key players like Aribo, Morelos has been suspended a hell of a load of times in the last few years, and they've had massive games against arch rival Celtic. All of these tests, Gerrard has come through most of the time with flying colours. Most noticeable in his 4-3-3 setup is that the wingers don't necessarily play like normal wingers would. They aren't looking for isolated one-on-one situations against the fullbacks. They're moving inside, almost playing as 2 number 10s and allowing not only the fullbacks to get around them and bomb on, but also to bring in other players from midfield as well. When the midfield join the attack, you've got so many players making fluid runs in all sorts of directions to help the striker and really get the most out of their attacking play. Of course, once they've got so many men forward, if they do lose the ball, they're already high up the pitch, so they can press the opposition pretty high and then win the ball back. Of course, this is a hallmark of a Jurgen Klopp team, but the other tactical points I don't quite think fit in with what the German does. This is where Gerrard will have to tweak things ever so slightly if he is to take the Liverpool job. For example, the likes of Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold aren't necessarily the fullbacks who bomb on and go all the way to the byline. Very frequently, they're crossing from a little bit of a deeper position. Robertson, I would say, gets forward a little bit more than Trent does, but again, they're crossing from deep. Alongside this, Liverpool do not have any midfielders who burst into the box on a regular basis. This is evident in the fact that the midfield three just do not get nowhere near enough goals. Fabinho sits deep to try and break up the play. Henderson is a box-to-box midfielder. Thiago also sitting deep to play nice passes. Gino Wijnaldum gets forward than the rest of them, but again, not enough. They don't really have a deep midfielder who makes those late runs into the box and brings them a helpful amount of goals per season. And on top of all of this, that when these players make the run to support the striker at Rangers, they've still got the striker ahead of them. Whether it's Morelos, whether it's Kemar Roof, whether it's Jermaine Defoe, there's still a striker in the box to finish off the chances. At Liverpool, Roberto Firmino is dropping really deep to help be that link from a deep midfield at Liverpool into the strikers, Salah and Mane, who tried to use the space to run in behind. When that's not possible, Liverpool often struggle, and this is exactly where the fluidity and the movement of Rangers players, from the fullbacks to the amount of number 10s that they play and to the midfielders bursting into the box, will be able eventually to break down low-sitting teams. Now, of course, I'm picking tactical traits from two different managers, two different teams, two different leagues, two different tests in opposition, but this is just what I see in the two differences between the manager, and here is how I think Gerrard, if he takes over at Liverpool, could affect the team, especially in the transfer market. So the first move I think that Gerrard should be making in the transfer market is, like I just mentioned, signing an attacking midfielder. Liverpool need a player between the midfield three and the front three who can not only carry the ball but also score and assist quite a few as well. I've just mentioned it, the names there, the fact they don't get many goals or assists or get into the box at many times is such a hindrance for Liverpool, and they desperately need a creative midfielder. In a perfect world, and I'm not saying they would join, in a perfect world I think the likes of Jack Grealish or even Leeds United's Rafinha would be fantastic signings for Liverpool. They wouldn't be part of the front three that then go on beyond the defence, but rather they'd get involved in the link-up play and help take the ball forwards. Look at the way the Rangers do it with Scott Arfield. He is one of the midfield three, but he gets forward so often, and he doesn't only do his attacking from high up the pitch, but he also does his defending from up there as well. His work rate puts himself in such an insane position that he can win the ball back and then influence the play from high up the field as well. And secondly, one of the biggest moves should be for a proper striker who scores goals. I'm not disrespecting Roberto Firmino's hustle, of course. He's done some fantastic things for Liverpool, but I just think when he's dropping deep and when the wingers haven't got the space to run into behind, they're just not scoring enough goals, Liverpool, and they need a striker who's going to consistently be in the box. Like I mentioned before, with Gerrard's Rangers, they've got Morelos, they've got Roof, they've got Defoe. When all of the movement and the build-up play is going on outside of the box, they have got a striker further ahead than anybody, unless Morelos likes to link up the play, which he does by coming deep ever so often, who will put the ball in the back of the net when the crosses come in. Firmino's done a wonderful job, like I mentioned, but can you imagine if Liverpool, obviously the idea is sign someone like Mbappe or Haaland. Personally, I don't think those transfers are going to happen. I just don't think Liverpool are that side who can go and spend 200 million or 150 million on some of the best strikers in the world and not have competition from other clubs. Having said that, I'm not really sure who else they could bring in though. Maybe they should have inserted a buyback clause to the Danny Ings deal to Southampton. Diogo Jota could be moved there on a permanent basis, or despite this, they could look to the Championship for the next star. I mean, the move of Ollie Watkins from Brentford to Aston Villa has gone pretty well for him. On top of this as well, like I mentioned before, if Liverpool were to not have Mane or Salah, if they were to have creative wingers part of the front three like Grealish or Rafinha, like I mentioned, these guys would be getting so involved in the creativity and the build-up play that they wouldn't then be there to go beyond the last man of the defensive line and score all the goals. Imagine if Salah and Mane were involved in the build-up a lot more instead of running through. They'd score even less goals and Liverpool would have even more of a problem, which then leads me to believe that if Gerrard were to come in, the main bit of business would be to sign a goal-scoring striker that they can rely on pretty much every single game. So if Steven Gerrard were to join, you'd like to think that both he and the Liverpool board would have taken some lessons from other legendary players hired around the league. I mean, they'd probably go as far as backing Gerrard more than the Man United board backed Ollie in the transfer market, but maybe not as much as the Chelsea board did, with Frank Lampard, by giving him a whole brand new £200 million worth of about 6 signings that were difficult to all fit into the team at one time. Of course, they could look to Arsenal for how to manage the expectations, but sooner or later the results would need to come, and you can't always just trust the process if you're not seeing the results of it on the field. On top of all of this, Steven Gerrard looks like a fine young manager, and personally I think he should maybe wait a little bit. There's no need for him to leave right now. Of course, if he goes to Liverpool and it doesn't work out, it wouldn't taint his legacy, but it would kind of be reaching the top too early. I mean, in Frank Lampard's case, obviously, Chelsea came calling, he left Derby, he took the job, but now, realistically, is Frank Lampard ever going to get a job as big as Chelsea again, having already failed there? The only other option is that in a few years' time, he's done well at another smaller club, but then maybe gets offered the Chelsea job. There's no way, having failed at that level, that I think Lampard could go on and get another top job, so there's no need for Gerrard to rush into it. This could be a very, very long coaching career from him, and he doesn't need to take the job at Liverpool after just a few seasons at Rangers. Maybe he should try and consolidate their position at the top of the league and see how they fare in Europe as well. If Gerrard comes in a few years' time, I think he'll have his tactics work out better, I think he'll have his man management style down to a T, and he'll know more of what he demands from himself and from the club if a potential move was to happen. Of course, when you look at the way Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp are doing this season, maybe, just maybe, the former legendary number 8 could find himself thrust into the spotlight a little bit sooner than imagined. So what do you guys think? Will Steven Gerrard become Liverpool manager, and how will he do? Let me know in the comment section down below. Check out everything else we've got going on OneFootball, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.